as we keep this thing rolling with Jeff Young, editor at Around the Foghorn, who Jeff, if you do not follow Jeff on social media, specifically Twitter, you have to if you are a Giants fan. He always has great stuff. Jeff, how are you doing, my friend? Thank you for joining us on the show.
Hey, how's it going, guys? I'm doing well. How are you guys doing today?
You know, Jeff, I've been better. My Saturday was off to a great start, went to a Santa parade, and then I saw something on my phone. Shohei Ohtani is going to the Dodgers. $700 million over the next 10 years, and the NL West continues to get stronger. What were your initial thoughts when you saw Shohei? Were you surprised?
No, not necessarily. I mean, him going to the Dodgers was something that the Dodgers prepared for well before this season. I mean, it was an open secret that was where he wanted to land. And of course, the Dodgers put out a deal for 10 years with $700 million, which I don't know what would be your first purchase when you make something like that. But yeah, it wasn't necessarily a surprise. I think it was always going to be the Dodgers all along, although the Blue Jays would have been a nice fit. I know they were in the mix as well.
Jeff, real quick, if Shohei doesn't have that injury, what are we talking about in terms of a contract? Do you think he lost anything from the injury? Could we have seen $800 million if he wasn't injured? Or do you think he just didn't lose that much value or perceived value, even though he had the arm injury and can't even pitch this next upcoming season?
Yeah, I mean, I think the belief is that he didn't really lose a ton of money in free agency. I mean, $700 million. How much more can you realistically go with a pitcher, with a player? There's got to be concern down the road as to how long he'll be able to pitch. Pitchers coming back from 2 Tommy John surgeries, the career span at that point is pretty short. So I think the Dodgers are realistic that he's probably going to be a DH only by the end of this contract, but this is a contract that's going to generate plenty of cash flow for the Dodgers. I mean, it's something it's not going to necessarily sell itself, but the Dodgers are going to make a lot of money in terms of marketing revenue, TV revenue, all of that because of Ohtani.
Talking to Jeff Young, editor at Around the Foghorn, and Jeff, I've seen some different takes on this, and personally, this doesn't hurt as much as Aaron Judge, even though once it all got revealed, Aaron Judge didn't even hurt that much once we knew that the Giants didn't really have a shot. And what I'm seeing here, and it's a bit contradicting in terms of different Giants media members and just Giants fans, is where Farhan fits on this and the blame that Farhan should get. What is your take on where Farhan Zaidi falls in this particular situation when we have Buster Only and different guys coming out saying that the Giants weren't even a finalist? What are your thoughts on Farhan and the missing, if you can even call it that, on Shohei Ohtani?
Yeah, I mean, they weren't truly players. They were in the mix because of the spending ability of their big market team. I think where the accountability lies with Farhan Zaidi is the fact that, he's put together this roster. This roster is his, iteration at this point. He's been in charge for 5 years. So it's not necessarily that the Giants lost out on Ohtani this offseason, but just the decisions that they've made in the past 5 years that have led up to this point to get a roster that's really outside of Logan Webb is really kind of stale, for lack of a better phrase. I think there's accountability there that lies in Farhan Zaidi in the front office in that regard. It was always going to be tough for the Giants to compete with the Dodgers because the Dodgers just offer so many, not just the financial component, but the non-financial, such as the ability to compete on an annual basis that they've proven year after year. The Giants, when you look at it, it's crazy when you think that they've only had one winning season since 2017. I mean, it's hard to sell free agents on the ability to compete when they haven't competed themselves. So I think if you look at this current iteration of the roster and the fact that it hasn't competed, I think there is some blame to be assessed to somebody like Zaidi because he's put this roster together. Whether the ownership group was willing to go to $700 million to compete with the Dodgers, I don't know if we'll ever get the full story in that. So I mean, they're probably accountable for this as well. But I mean, at the end of the day, it was always going to be the Dodgers.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, right? You can blame Farhan for being in the position, but I'm not blaming him for – I'm blaming him because they weren't a thought based on what the Giants have been doing, right? I mean, if you are trying to sell Shohei, what was even the pitch? What was the pitch to Shohei if you are the Giants, right? I mean, Patrick Bailey looks kind of good, and you can pitch alongside Logan Webb. And I'm not even trying to be funny here. I don't really know what you're trying to sell him on. I know that he wanted to stay on the West Coast. The only thing I thought that the Giants could possibly do is if they made the playoffs and maybe made some noise, you could sell Shohei on being the missing piece. But when you miss the playoffs, Shohei just left the team with a guy who's much better than anybody else on the Giants, and they couldn't make the playoffs in a lesser division. So why would he sign up to do that all over again?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the Giants or any team not named the Dodgers or even the Blue Jays, I think they'd have to sell him on the fact that he is the missing piece, that he's either going to be what brings them into contention or he's going to be the start of, turning the organization around. I mean, when some of these players like Bryce Harper signs with the Phillies, Manny Machado signs with the Padres, it's not like those teams were good at the time of the signing. So I think the Giants, specifically would have had to sell, Ohtani on like, hey, we're going to start something. If you sign here, we're going to try and take down the Dodgers. But, it's so hard. I mean, Ohtani and his camp were pretty clear and pretty consistent that he wanted to play for a competitor, and few teams can offer that quality more than the Dodgers. So, it would have been a tough sales pitch, and I think it was always going to be a tough sales pitch for Farhan Zaidi and ownership group. So that's just kind of where they're at right now.
Talking to Jeff Young, editor at Around the Foghorn. All right, Jeff, let's start to get a little bit optimistic here. What's next for the Giants?
Yeah. So, I mean, they did meet with the NPB star pitcher Yoshinobu Yamamoto yesterday. So they're clearly in the mix. He's somebody that they scouted heavily even before he was posted. There was a belief at one point this offseason that they were at least favorites or one of the top teams to land somebody like that. I think the Giants have to be realistic about how they can improve this roster in 2024, and it's got to be through the starting rotation. That's where they can build a competitive advantage. Because if you look at the rotations around the National League, I mean, some of the better teams in baseball, or some of the better teams in the National League, like the Braves, kind of have a rotation in the middle of the pack. You look at the Dodgers, they have more questions than answers in their rotation. So I think the Giants have to realize how they create an advantage is through the starting rotation. And that's going to, be supplementing it through free agency, whether it be Yamamoto or a guy like Blake Snell. They really need to add, at least in my opinion, 2 quality arms. So, I think that's just going to have to be how they try and compete in 2024. It's just pitching and defense. It sounds kind of old school, but that's really where the Giants have to be at, because they're not going to find, there's no other Shohei Ohtani in free agency. There's guys like Matt Chapman and Cody Bellinger who would be good, solid fits for the Giants, but they have their own, they have their own question marks as well. So I think that through the starting rotation is really where the Giants need to pivot going forward.
So, Jeff, you don't want to see the Giants, obviously not overpay, but would you want to add a Matt Chapman or Cody Bellinger, or do you just want to get pitching and see what the Giants have with their current lineup?
Yeah, I mean, Matt Chapman's going to be connected to the Giants until he signs, whether that is with the Giants or whether that's with another team. I think he would help improve the infield defense. The infield defense wasn't necessarily an issue last year, but it's one area that, if you're going to try and build a solid rotation, one way to support that is by putting on a good defensive team and realizing that a guy like Matt Chapman may not be, an offensive force. He might be somebody who, bats a little lower in the lineup, or he could be in the middle of the lineup for a team like the Giants. But really his value is going to come from his defense. And, he's been an excellent defender throughout his career. He's a 4-time Gold Glove winner. They're probably going to have to pay a lot of money, overpay, even to get a guy like him. But there's plenty of connections there. So it wouldn't be a bad fit. It wouldn't be a perfect fit. But I think you have to realize that, the bat has been declining for years. And that's probably something that's that might continue to happen. But, he offers excellent defense currently, and third base defense tends to age pretty well. He offers occasional power, and those are probably things that will continue to be strengths for him, even as his next contract goes through.
Jeff Young. Jeff, thank you so much for joining, man. We will talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. My pleasure. Always happy to chat Giants baseball.
There you go. That is Jeff Young, editor at Around the Foghorn. Again, follow him on Twitter. Follow him on X. Always has crazy stats when it comes to Giants baseball. And hopefully we won't have to dig that deep this upcoming season, because the Giants will just have some of the old school stats that we remember, like home runs maybe and RBIs, and we don't have to go into all these different acronyms. So hopefully that works out for the Giants. And I do hope that they get somebody, whether it's Yamamoto or Blake Snell. You got to add to that pitching staff. And I would like a big bat too. I know Chapman may be looking more like a flash in the pan in terms of the bat, but maybe you just need a change of scenery. And look, a lot of people talk about the Giants and that ballpark, and even though they've changed the dimensions over the last couple of years and how hitters don't like going there, but maybe you get a guy who isn't trying to do too much and it could revive them, right? Doubles are okay too. We're all good with doubles, even though everybody likes a home run. All right, got to get to a break. When we get back, continuing to talk Giants and Kings. Stiles and Watkins, Sactown Sports.
Can the Niners build off their NFC